Welcome to this special presentation of the 2020 Melbourne Police Department Awards Ceremony. On this program, you'll see introductions from Chief David Gillespie and Mayor Paul Alfrey. Deputy Chief David Waltemeyer will present the Of the Month Awards and an uplifting salute to your service during this extraordinary year. The commanders will present 4 segments of meritorious and service awards and decorations, followed by a special tribute from Vice President of the Melbourne Police Foundation, Nadine Smith. Chief Gillespie will present the Of the Year Awards and a special live presentation, and will conclude with a personal message just for you and your families. Thank you for your service. And thank you for joining us for this video presentation of the 2020 Melbourne Police Department Awards Ceremony. Now, here's Chief David Gillespie.
Hello and welcome to the Melbourne Police Department's 13th Annual Award Ceremony. Due to social distancing concerns and the COVID-19 pandemic, we are hosting this year's award ceremony virtually. First, I want to thank our Mayor Paul Alfrey, Vice Mayor Tim Thomas, and council members for their unwavering support throughout the year. I also want to thank City Manager Shannon Lewis for her leadership and for being an active participant in our community conversation over the past year. I want to recognize the Police Foundation, Mr. Clyde Bridge, President of the Board of Directors, and all of the members of our board for supporting our annual award ceremony every year. We have grown to lean on the foundation for a variety of things, and I thank them for their commitment to the Melbourne Police Department. To the family members of our law enforcement officers and employees, I want to thank you for the support and encouragement that you provide your loved one that allows them to serve our community so well. There are many nights when families have to pick up the slack when we are not available due to being called out, staying late for an investigation, or attending a community event. So thank you for being our rock. Last year was one of the most challenging for those of us in law enforcement, and I couldn't be more proud of the way our officers and civilian employees performed. Despite intense scrutiny, criticism, and a national narrative that painted police officers in a negative light, our employees continued to serve with bravery, integrity, and a commitment to excellence. Police officers throughout this great country sacrifice themselves to serve the greater good every day. They put their lives on the line and serve selflessly to keep our community safe. However, the reality is that a staggering 264 police officers were killed in the line of duty in 2020. Representing a 96% increase compared to the previous year. Law enforcement officers were attacked, ambushed, and injured in ways we have not experienced before. The dangers of the job are real, and last year was one of the most violent in recent memory. Last year also brought the COVID-19 crisis, and our employees have been exposed by working through the pandemic, which is something we have not faced before, at least in my lifetime. The accomplishments of our officers is a testament to their commitment and selfless service. I am extremely proud of our police officers and employees, and it is an honor to formally recognize them for their acts of heroism, bravery, and commitment to the community. Their dedication to duty is extraordinary. As you listen to the awards, I hope you are as proud of your police department as I am. You will hear about 2 officers in separate incidents who rescued people from burning buildings, an officer delivering a baby, investigators who followed a homicide suspect as he drove around the county discarding evidence, and communication center technicians who provided critical information to enhance cases and save lives. Officers arrested armed and violent offenders, and detectives solved 9 homicide cases last year. Tremendous work under stressful circumstances. the type of work that we can all be proud of and inspired by. We are reminded every day that policing in today's world has become very complex. The expectations are high and the margin of error is thin. Officers' actions are scrutinized and they are accountable now more than ever. They must know a little bit about everything and be able to calm any situation. I am fortunate to see the great work that is going on every day. Traffic stops, taking guns off the street, removing drugs from people's homes, community outreach and partnerships and collaborating with other law enforcement agencies are all things we do to keep our community safe. And tonight, we're going to hear about the outstanding work that is done by the men and women of the Melbourne Police Department. All of the awardees represent the Melbourne Police Department in the highest regard. As you hear these stories, understand that officers work in an uncontrolled environment. The most basic contact can turn deadly in the blink of an eye. It's the manner in how the awardees responded to the challenge that makes the difference. While this presentation is different than we have done previously, I hope you enjoy it just the same. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary work.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mayor Paul Alfrey with a message of acknowledgement and gratitude for you and those you care about.
Hello, I'm here to congratulate each and every one of you for another amazing year. Normally we do this in person, and I really enjoy this event, but unfortunately this year is a little different. But what is not different is the service that we give our community. I want to say thank you. We are truly blessed to have each and every one of you. I assure you as mayor that we will invest in our police department. We will hold the blue line and we have your back. I want to say thank you to each one of you and your families, because without them, you could not have achieved what you have achieved here tonight. So on behalf of the City of Melbourne, again, thank you.
Deputy Chief David Waltemeyer is here to present the Of the Month Awards and a touching look back on your extraordinary service during the COVID crisis.
Hello, I'm Deputy Chief David Waltemeyer, and I'll be presenting 2 awards today. First, I'm honored to be presenting the awards for the officers, employees, and communication officers of the month. We at the Melbourne Police Department have many unsung heroes that work tirelessly toward one goal: to make the Melbourne Police Department the premier agency in Brevard County. Each recipient, in one form or another, has found ways to improve our department, whether it was through finding processes within their work group that could be improved, demonstrating attention to detail, being a good team member, working towards common goals, or taking proactive enforcement action to protect and serve the citizens of Melbourne. Each month, these employees exemplified the best of this department. Congratulations to all of them. Another award I am presenting will be given to all the employees who adapted to the COVID pandemic and continue to give 100% even when faced with constant uncertainty, requiring constant adjustments to how they did their job. 2020 was a year like no other. All the command staff, officers, communication officers, and civilian employees operated professionally through an event the likes of which we have never seen before. Everyone worked together to keep each other safe, our citizens safe, and still deliver professional police services. Our employees found innovative ways to work and thrive under these new conditions. For those reasons and many more, I'm honored to present the Unit Citation Bar to these employees.
And now, presenting the first of 4 blocks of awards, is Commander Chuck Carafano of Patrol Operations Division.
Hi, I'm Chuck Carafano, the commander for Melbourne City Police Department. And today I want to share about some of our heroes, some highlights from the year of 2020. And when I do that, I just want to also share that, my first recollection of a hero was when I was a kid. And I used to watch the old black and white Superman series. And I could always remember the narrator in the beginning. He talked about how Superman was faster than a silver bullet, and he could leap tall buildings in a single bound, and just all this amazing stuff that Superman did. But more amazing than that was the end of that narration. He always ended with this. He always said what Superman stood for. He said he stood for truth, justice, and the American way. And that was what a hero, to me, as I think back, always stood for. So this year, 2020, was crazy, right? We had some anti-police sentiment, we had the pandemic, and there was a lot of adversity. And I think of our heroes. When this was going on, they kind of stood back or stood aside, and some stepped down. But our department, when you look at statistically what we did this last year, we actually stood up. And when you look at adversity, some say it doesn't necessarily define you, it reveals who you are. So I think when I look at 2020, it revealed who we really were as an organization. And I'm so thankful for the men and women of law enforcement, because truly, when we look at heroes and we look at what we did this last year, this is what we really stood for, was truth, justice, and the American way. On August 28, 2020, the Melbourne Police Department received a call from the Indian River Sheriff's Office regarding an individual making suicidal threats. They pinged his phone and discovered the individual in the area City Hall. Officers arrived and observed the individual on the top floor of the parking garage. Upon seeing a police car, the subject immediately stood on the ledge and threatened to jump. Officers started a conversation, and eventually the subject sat down on the ledge but refused to get down. During this conversation with the officers, the subject turned away. The officers took this opportunity to safely remove the individual from the ledge and detain him. He was transported to Circles of Care under the Baker Act. All officers performed this task in an exemplary manner, displaying alertness and communication skills. Field Training Officer, FTO Joseph Kratzoff, and Canine Officer Gregory Hughes are awarded the Honorable Service Bar. On May 14, 2020, Detective Frost was assigned to follow up on the death investigation ruled a homicide by the medical examiner. Detective Frost interviewed the subject at length. She was able to obtain the subject's admission that he was the only person with the victim at the time of her death. This fact, along with the available physical evidence, was sufficient to establish probable cause for a warrant for first-degree murder. Officers Davenport and Hibbs were charged with the task of quickly and quietly arresting the subject. A non-physical arrest was deemed necessary to keep the aggressive, violent subject calm for further interviewing. The detectives hoped for an admission of guilt by the subject. The officers were able to locate and arrest the subject within minutes without incident. Detectives Frost and Tunick conducted an interview post-Miranda and were ultimately successful in their attempt to gain a full confession. After enduring a relationship where physical abuse occurred with increased frequency, the victim was violently murdered by her boyfriend. The victim and her family deserve justice. An extremely violent individual was removed from the streets of Melbourne. For their exemplary efforts, Detectives Jennifer Frost, Jesse Tunick, and Officers Tyler Davenport and Gary Hibbs are awarded the Certificate of Commendation. On October 28, 2020, Officer Peter Dolce was dispatched to an agency assist call at Holmes Regional Medical Center. The initial call was for a male advising his wife was giving birth in the hospital parking lot. When he arrived on scene, he made contact with the woman who was giving birth, and the baby was protruding from the womb. Officer Dolce was able to assist the mother by supporting the child as the delivery was completed. He ensured the child was breathing and placed the baby boy in his mother's chest and remained on scene until the medical aid arrived. Officer Dolce's actions are outside of his normal duty expectations and demonstrate dedication and perseverance, resulting in an unusually important police accomplishment. Officer Peter Dolce is awarded the Honorable Service Bar. On November 2, 2020, a call for service was received regarding a shooting at a local apartment complex. Officer Willingham and Sampieri, along with Officer Hughes, were looking for the suspect vehicle. The officers responded tactically, rather than rush to the scene in order to spot the suspect leaving the area. An SUV traveling southbound, matching the description provided by dispatch, passed by the officers. Both units recognized this vehicle as matching the description and immediately coordinated a high-risk stop. A traffic stop was conducted, and both suspects exited the vehicle with their hands up. Suddenly, the driver re-entered the vehicle and fled. The suspect passenger was secured by Officer Willingham and Sampieri, while Officer Smith began pursuing the driver and the vehicle. A successful pit maneuver was executed by Smith and Lieutenant Schaefer. The suspect fled on foot, was chased by several officers, and found hiding in a nearby vehicle. These officers acted in an exceptional manner, responding tactically and spotting the vehicle, coordinating the high-risk stop and conducting high-speed pursuit, resulting in no injuries and apprehensions of both suspects. Officers Brian Smith, Michael Sampieri, Jarrett Willingham, Canine Officer Greg Hughes, and Lieutenant Trevor Schaefer are awarded the Exceptional Duty Bar.
The second awards block is presented by Commander Heath Sanders of Criminal Investigations Division.
On January 3rd, 2020, the Criminal Investigations Division, the Community Response Division, the Patrol Division, and the Communications Division investigated a possible homicide. Officer Joe Masante provided information regarding an unconfirmed rumor of a homicide. SIU set up surveillance for the possible crime scene while other detectives began initial interviews. During surveillance, SIU reported seeing a U-Haul backed up to the front door of the house and observed two males acting extremely nervous. As the U-Haul left the scene, they were kept under surveillance by the BCSO Star helicopter, as well as members of the Game Over Task Force. Traveling to Cocoa Beach while making numerous random stops to discard items in trash dumpsters, the van made random turns, traveled at varying speeds, and backtracked to areas they already visited. Communication officers kept track of the radio communications and logged numerous locations necessary for the retrieval of all evidence. Dumpsters were secured, and items with blood spatter and other evidentiary value items were retrieved. Once the vehicle was stopped, it traveled back to Melbourne. The driver and passenger were taken into custody, where detectives Johnny Bynum and Charles Landmester conducted hours of interviews with the suspects, which resulted in a confession to the homicide. Simultaneously, other detectives were executing a search warrant at the home where the body of the victim was discovered. CSI, along with BCSO CSI unit, processed 7 dumpsters from Indian Harbor Beach to Merritt Island. MPD CSI team alone collected, logged, and processed 236 items of evidence from the crime scene, dumpsters, U-Haul, and the victim. On January 24, 2020, Detectives Bynum and Landmester, in coordination with the State Attorney's Office, submitted an arrest affidavit for first-degree murder on the primary suspect. All employees in this nomination played intricate roles that exemplified teamwork and tremendous coordinated effort by all. For this reason, they were all awarded the Unit Meritorious Performance Award. On January 30th, 2020, while driving to work, Officer Smith heard a radio call regarding a structure fire just a short distance from where he was located. Officer Smith began clearing the 4-unit apartment building. He approached the second unit where the heat prevented knocking on the door, so he kicked in the door and a man immediately ran out to safety. Officer Smith then went to the third apartment where he could hear someone yelling for help. Due to the heat of the fire, he was not able to get to the door or the window. He grabbed the fire extinguisher from nearby and sprayed the fire near the window of the apartment to reduce the heat enough to break the window. He then yelled for the occupant to get out of the apartment. Listening to Officer Smith's commands, the occupant was able to make it to the door and escape the burning apartment. The female was transported to the hospital due to smoke inhalation. While at the hospital, she was treated by Dr. Green, who informed Officer Smith the female had extreme carbon monoxide poisoning from breathing the smoke. Officer Smith was also treated for carbon monoxide poisoning. Officer Smith's quick response, recognition of the severity of the emergency, and immediate actions resulted in saving the lives of 2 individuals. Officer Smith is awarded the Commendation Bar and the Exceptional Duty Bar. On February 28, 2020, FTO Kratzoff and Officer Kramer responded to a call regarding an unresponsive male outside his home. They immediately began administering CPR and did so for 4 minutes. The subject was stabilized and transported to Melbourne Regional Hospital. The performance of this task in a competent manner most likely saved the subject's life. FTO Kratzoff and Officer Kramer performed their duties in an exemplar manner. They are awarded the Honorable Service Bar. On February 6, 2020, officers responded to a call regarding a male suspect armed with a knife and threatening to harm himself. The officers were unable to get the victim to the front door, so they went to a bedroom window where the victim was being held in a bear hug by the armed suspect. FTO Gill engaged the suspect in conversation, calming him to a small degree. The suspect then began looking for a weapon, so FTO Gill and Officer Miller entered the bedroom through the window and subdued the suspect before he could find the knife that was hidden and before he could harm the victim. Simultaneously to the suspect being subdued in the bedroom, Officer Doxwell utilized a sledgehammer to breach the front door. Officers Doxwell, Tarantino, Schwartz, and DiNapoli entered the residence as backup to the officers in the bedroom. Officer Gill, at great risk to his own safety and with the help of Officer Miller, was able to take a mentally ill individual into custody with no harm to the suspect or the victim. Officer Doxwell was able to gain entry for himself and the other officers, providing required backup for the successful conclusion to the incident. FTO Daniel Gill is awarded the Honorable Service Bar. Officers Miller and Doxwell are awarded the Certificate of Commendation. On February 12, 2020, Lieutenant Shore was alerted to a GPS tracking device on new appliances installed in a newly constructed home in a subdivision under construction. FTO Quebec and Officers Clifford and Durgan responded directly to the residence as other units established a perimeter. One suspect fled immediately upon encountering the on-site officers. Moments later, the suspect was heard in a wooded area near Derry Road. Sergeant Cabral and Officers Dolce were able to locate and take the suspect into custody. Officer Durgan obtained video showing the suspect and his vehicle license plate. He and an accomplice were subsequently charged with numerous burglaries in the county. The coordinated efforts of these highly skilled police officers resulted in a strong case against a fleeing felon. FTO Stephen Quebec, Officer Sean Durgan, Peter Dolce, and Timothy Clifford, Sergeants Evan Wells and Jeff Cabral, and Lieutenant Ryan Shore are awarded a Certificate of Commendation. On February 23, 2020, officers responded to reports of a male actively breaking into several vehicles on Canary Isles Drive. A victim was watching the suspect by his home security cameras and reported to dispatch where the suspect was headed. Sergeant McDaniel and Lieutenant Shore worked quickly to establish a perimeter and assigned units to several key locations in order to surround the complex. Officers Quebec, Durgan, Jones, and William Gould parked a distance away from the entrance and approached on foot just in time to take the now fleeing suspect into custody. Officers White, Gould, Thatcher, and Jones then began canvassing the neighborhood, which led them to find 9 more additional vehicle burglaries from the suspect. The swift, coordinated efforts of these officers led to a quick end of crime for the citizens in the Canary Isles Drive neighborhood. For these reasons, they are all being awarded certificates of commendations. On March 18, 2020, FTO Ferguson received a call reporting a kitchen fire had spread and the residents were evacuating their home. Officer Ferguson arrived on the scene prior to the fire department. Officer Ferguson was able to extinguish the fire and facilitate the medical treatment for a subject with respiratory distress. FTO Ferguson performed his task in an exemplary manner, displaying alertness, efficiency, and dedication to duty. He is awarded the Certificate of Commendation.
Now, here is Commander Marc Claycomb of the Community Services Division.
On March 17, 2020, Officer Hunt responded to a well-being check for a female that was making threats to harm herself. Officer Hunt made contact with the female, who confirmed that she wished to harm herself and was willing to go to circles of care. As the female began to stand up from being seated on the couch, she lunged into the cushions, retrieved a knife, and immediately tried to thrust the knife into her chest. Officer Hunt grabbed the suicidal female's arms, began wrestling with her, and got the knife away. She also was issuing verbal commands to family members to not interfere. Eventually, Officer Hunt was able to wrestle the knife free from the female's grasp and detain her in handcuffs. Officer Hunt single-handedly prevented an individual from taking her own life, at great risk to her own safety. Officer Hunt exhibited alertness, efficiency, and professional skills. For this, Officer Hunt is awarded the Commendation Bar. On April 16, 2020, the department received a call regarding an armed robbery. The victim was attempting to purchase a phone from the Let Go when the suspect pulled out a handgun and robbed her. The suspect was known to officers from prior armed robberies he committed. When responding to the call, FTO Kratzoff spotted the suspect's car traveling north on US 1. FTO Kleberg, FTO Stewart, PPO Schwartz, and Cooper and Officer Blair immediately followed the suspect until he crashed his vehicle and he and a passenger fled on foot. They were both apprehended within minutes. A handgun was located on the front seat of the car. The victim subsequently identified the suspect as the man who robbed her. The suspect and passenger confessed to committing all 3 robberies. FTO Joseph Kratzoff, Brent Kleberg, and Paul Stewart, Officer Jeff Blair, PPO Zachary Schwartz, and Felicia Cooper were able to arrest 2 suspects who posed a serious threat to the safety of our community through a series of violent acts. They are all awarded the Exceptional Duty Bar. On March 30th, 2020, an aggravated assault suspect was located by patrol officers after threatening his brother with a firearm. The suspect refused to surrender and held his 5-year-old son with him inside their home. SWAT and CNU resources were activated. Detective Ishikawa contacted the suspect and utilized a full range of techniques to establish rapport. This was the beginning of a 5-hour negotiation between the suspect and Detective Ishikawa. Due to a generator failure, a power source for the throw phones was improvised by FTO Ferguson, FTO Gill, and Sergeant Mitchell utilizing a police vehicle. Detectives Tunick and Perez, through interviews with friends and relatives of the suspect, provided information vital to the negotiation. Negotiator Ishikawa convinced the suspect to surrender himself without incident to the SWAT team. Detectives Nicole Ishikawa, Amy Perez, Jesse Tunick, Sergeants Grinwis and Mitchell, and FTO Ed Ferguson were able to successfully negotiate an end to a potentially tragic situation in spite of equipment failures and the use of highly skilled negotiation tactics. They are all awarded the Certificate of Commendation. On March 29, 2020, Officers Musante and Miller, with backup from FTO Kleberg and PPO Schwartz, responded to a call regarding a female stabbing victim. The victim was immediately transported to Holmes Regional, where Officer Miller conducted a sworn recorded interview. The suspect was subsequently identified by the victim in a photo lineup presented by Officer Frank Legate. The next day, after Detective Cahalan obtained a search warrant, the suspect's bike was discovered by FTO Kleberg and PPO Cooper. After requesting FTO Stewart and PPO Cooper to establish a perimeter, the suspect was observed leaving the house and diving into a tent set up in the backyard. He was arrested without incident. The suspected knife used in the attack was spotted in the tent. Detective Cahalan and CSI Sousa provided required services to process the scene and obtain fingerprints from the weapon. The combined efforts of Joseph Musante, Frank Legate, Richard Miller, FTO's Paul Stewart and Brent Kleberg, Detective Thomas Cahalan, CSI Brianna Sousa, and PPO Zachary Schwartz and Felicia Cooper resulted in the capture and prosecution of a violent felony suspect. They are all awarded the Certificate of Commendation. On April 16, 2020, Officer Blazewicz was slowly patrolling the Melbourne Square Mall. The mall was closed and had significantly reduced their security staff. Alerted by the sound of a metal tool dropping on the pavement, Officer Blazewicz discovered a male subject fleeing and refusing to respond to her commands to stop running. Officer Blazewicz, keeping her eyes on the fleeing subject, was able to radio for backup. Several units responded, including K-9 units, and set up a perimeter. Officer Blazewicz discovered one of the store's vehicles vandalized and contacted their corporate security employees. West Melbourne and Melbourne K-9 units and patrol units continued their search. The K-9 units established voice contact, but again, the suspect ignored commands to surrender. The suspect was ultimately located and secured. Officer Blazewicz then identified the suspect as the one that fled from her. Officer Blazewitz's exemplary work resulted in the arrest of a serial criminal. Officer Blazewicz is awarded the Honorable Service Bar. This group accomplished a tremendous amount of work as a cohesive unit in their administrative positions during the most recent COVID-19 pandemic. Major accomplishments include orchestrated new hire orientation for 9 new hires while maintaining social distancing parameters, produced numerous training bulletins, conducted hours of research on the many different information sessions regarding the pandemic, maintained and moved forward the day-to-day functioning of the training unit and the field training unit. In this division, missing paperwork or filings can have a severe impact and ramifications for our employees. Nothing was missed and everything ran smoothly. This level of stepping up during a historic pandemic once again proved the Support Services Division's mission of supporting the officers so they can support the community, and that's maintained. Sergeant Nicole Gould, Sergeant Bradley Blout, Training Technician Priscilla Carrera, and Administrative Assistant Karen Shelley are awarded the Unit Meritorious Performance Award. On April 28, 2020, PPO Durgan and FTO Middendorf discovered a suspicious vehicle while patrolling a heavily wooded area of the Sarno Extension. The vehicle was not occupied, so FTO Middendorf requested the aid of Canine Officer Rodriguez and Canine Caesar. During this course of their investigations, Canine Caesar led them to a male and a female in the area that they felt may be associated with the vehicle. Further observations and investigations led to the arrest of both individuals for crimes that included false information, a felony warrant, possession of illicit drugs. Officer Durgan activated his internal microphone and camera while the suspects were in his patrol vehicle. Although not known at the time, this procedural decision would prove to be extremely valuable in a homicide investigation at another location in the city, revealing that the two suspects had an association with the residence where the homicide occurred. FTO Derek Middendorf, PPO Sean Durgan, Canine Officer Johnny Rodriguez, and Canine Caesar are awarded the Certificate of Commendation. On June 13, 2020, Officer Jones responded to a call involving a structure fire in West Melbourne. He was not far from the address, so he responded to assist. Officer Jones was the first officer or firefighter on scene and observed a pickup truck attempting to leave the area of the fire. Residents in the area identified to Officer Jones that the vehicle was being driven by the suspect who intentionally set the fire. Officer Jones was able to stop the vehicle and detain the driver. While waiting for West Melbourne to arrive on scene, Officer Jones recorded several spontaneous utterances made where the suspect admitted intentionally setting the fire to get back at the resident. West Melbourne police completed their investigation and charged the suspect with attempted murder and arson. Officer Jones' actions are outside of his normal duty expectations and demonstrate dedication and perseverance in the furtherance of police services. Officer Evan Jones is awarded the Exceptional Duty Bar. On Sunday, April 5th, at 18:12 hours, Officer Getch responded to a domestic violence battery call at the Longleaf Apartments. Richard Campstra struck his adult daughter with a can, and when Getch made contact with Campstra, he armed himself with a knife and then pointed at Getch and threatened to kill everyone. Campstra then pointed the knife at his own chest and backed into a bedroom. Campstra's wife informed the officer that Campstra suffered from a traumatic brain injury that made him violent. Other units were called to assist while Getch removed Campstra's wife from the residence to keep her safe. Officer Ira Vasey then began talking to Campstra in an effort to calm him down and de-escalate the situation. While Ira Vasey kept in contact with Campstra, Sergeant Eder directed the other officers to specific positions inside and outside the apartment, while some officers were told to clear nearby apartments for tenant safety. While attempting to de-escalate the situation, officers heard Campstra loading a firearm in the bedroom. Campstra suddenly opened the bedroom door and leveled a rifle in the direction of the officers. Campstra's clear and violent threat was met with gunfire from the officers on scene. The officers' decisive actions and engagement with the subject prevented the injury or death of officers on scene as well as his family and neighbors. For the tactical direction and teamwork of adjoining work groups, the officers were given the above noted awards.
Our final block of awards is presented by Commander Cheryl Traynor of Support Services Division.
During the month of May, there were 3 weeks that Communications Center personnel outperformed all agencies in Brevard County and were able to answer all 911 calls within 10 seconds, totaling 4,394 calls. The Communications Center is currently fully staffed at 32 personnel, but during the month of May, the Communications Center was staffed with 22 cleared personnel, with 5 openings and 5 non-certified personnel in training. During this time, personnel were dealing with the COVID pandemic and several high-priority calls that dealt with gun shooting victims, 2 alarm commercial structure fires, and murders. During these trying times, every person in the Communications Center went above and beyond to provide the citizens of Melbourne the best customer service possible. For providing excellent service and outperforming all other Brevard agencies, the above-noted employees are awarded the Unit Meritorious Award. On May 21st, 2020, FTO White responded to a report of a vehicle burglary. FTO White made a detailed list of items stolen during the burglary, including make and model information and unique owner-applied engravings. The stolen items totaled more than $1,700 in value. FTO White searched multiple databases, including leads that led to pawn transactions that matched her stolen items. She then turned it over to a detective sergeant, which led to an arrest for vehicle burglary and dealing in stolen property. They were also able to link the subject to several other vehicle burglary and pawn schemes throughout the county. FTO White's exceptional acts were outside of her normal duty expectations and demonstrate dedication and perseverance. The result is an important police accomplishment leading to the closure of several outstanding cases. FTO Taylor White is awarded the Honorable Service Bar. On May 22, 2020, Officers Iani and Getch, working as a two-person unit, stopped a vehicle for running a stop sign. Officer Iani recognized the vehicle as the same vehicle that fled from him on a prior traffic stop. As both occupants were observed making exaggerated movements and attempting to conceal items, both occupants were directed to exit the vehicle. The driver eventually exited the vehicle while still making exaggerated movements and defying commands. The passenger began exiting the vehicle and lunged into the back seat and attempted to retrieve an item from a backpack on the rear floorboard. The passenger was removed from the vehicle and detained. The driver attempted to intervene during the passenger's detainment and was arrested. A search of the vehicle was conducted and officers located a large quantity of drugs, $1,200 in currency, plastic bags, scales, and razors consistent with repackaging and sale of narcotics. 2 firearms and ammunition were also discovered. The suspects were arrested on multiple charges, including possession of firearms and ammunition by a convicted felon, armed trafficking and possession with intent to sell. The passenger subject was a career violent offender with numerous trafficking and weapons convictions. Officers Getch and Iani displayed professional skills in the arrest of 2 armed, violent, career felony offenders who posed a serious threat to the community's safety. They are awarded the Honorable Service Bar. Detectives Jesse Tunick, Marc Brackett, Eric Gould, Jennifer Frost, Thomas Cahalan, and Charles Landmesser handled 2 murder investigations during 1 week in March. On March 7, 2020, Detectives Cahalan and Brackett were assigned to a murder investigation at the River Palm Hotel. During the initial investigation, Detective Gould was able to interview the victim's ex-wife and obtain vital information in the case, leading to other witnesses. After interviewing dozens of witnesses, the detectives were able to obtain circumstantial evidence pointing toward a suspect. They were also able to develop probable cause to issue a warrant for a stolen vehicle charge. The suspect was arrested by West Melbourne. The suspect was so violent that he had to be tased by West Melbourne Police Department. He was also violent during his interview with Detectives Cahalan and Brackett, striking Detective Brackett in the face. He was subdued by both detectives. The 2 detectives re-engaged the suspect, calmed him down for a second time, and eventually obtained a confession to homicide. The suspect was arrested on premeditated first-degree homicide. While detectives were engaged in case follow-up, the unit was requested to assist with a second homicide. An individual was found shot at a local condominium. Detectives Tunick and Frost were assigned to the case. The incident stemmed from a home invasion robbery where the victim came outside and shot at the robbers. One of the robbers was killed instantly. Several interviews were conducted by Detectives Landmesser and Gould, assisting Detectives Tunick and Frost. The detectives had to sort through a myriad of misinformation and deception before finally obtaining a full confession from one of the suspects. Eventually, 2 suspects were charged with a second-degree felony murder and home invasion robbery. These 6 detectives performed at levels exceeding their normal job expectations. Their perseverance resulted in the arrest of 3 murder suspects on 2 separate cases within the course of a week. Detectives Jesse Tunick, Marc Brackett, Eric Gould, Jennifer Frost, Thomas Cahalan, and Charles Landmesser are awarded the Honorable Duty Bar. On June 23, 2020, Officers Clifford and Self, operating as a 2-person unit, observed a suspicious vehicle operating at a high rate of speed and driving recklessly through a residential neighborhood. They initiated a traffic stop. As soon as they activated the light bar, the suspect abruptly stopped and fled, jumping over a wall and fence to another vehicle, thereby escaping the scene. The suspect was clearly seen by Officer Self and identified as a known violent convicted felon. When the abandoned vehicle was searched, the officers located a stolen semi-automatic handgun with 15 rounds of ammunition. Officers Clifford and Self completed the charging documents and left the charges open. Within 3 days, while on patrol, the officers located the suspect and quickly took him into custody before he was able to flee. This investigation and arrest is an excellent example of achieving results from proactive policing. A violent convicted felon was arrested, and the victim of the weapon theft was made whole. Officers Timothy Clifford and Brett Self demonstrated awareness, competence, and dedication to duty. They are awarded the Certificate of Commendation. On August 13, 2020, FTO Taylor White was investigating a crash on North Wickham Road when she heard a loud, audible fire alarm from nearby apartments. FTO White immediately went to investigate the alarm. Finding voluminous smoke pouring out of an apartment unit and visible flames in an engulfed unit, FTO White located the resident of the burning unit who was calling 911 and determined the apartment was empty of occupants. FTO White proceeded to evacuate all 24 apartments single-handedly before the arrival of any other first responders. She undoubtedly prevented potential harm and possible loss of life. FTO Taylor White is awarded the Commendation Bar. On July 30th, 2020, the Special Investigations Unit observed a vehicle leaving a residence known for drugs, quality of life, and violent crime investigations. While following the vehicle, the detectives observed the driver commit a traffic infraction. During the traffic stop, Officer Rodriguez walked Canine Caesar around the exterior of the violator's car, and Canine Caesar gave his positive alert signal that there was a presence of illegal narcotics inside the vehicle. The vehicle search yielded drugs and narcotics. In addition to the trafficking and possession of narcotics charges the driver would face, this discovery by Officer Rodriguez and Canine Caesar would also assist the detectives in their ongoing investigation at the suspect residence. For their special assistance to the Special Investigations Unit, Canine Officer Johnny Rodriguez and Canine Caesar are awarded the Certificate of Commendation. On August 25, 2020, Officer Sampieri responded to a notification of a residential fire. Officer Sampieri arrived on scene well before any other police or fire units. Officer Sampieri observed thick black smoke billowing from the residence and flames were visible inside. Officer Sampieri made entry into the house and quickly located a disoriented elderly male that had not made it to the exit. Officer Sampieri escorted a visibly shaken citizen to safety across the street. The resident was treated for smoke inhalation but escaped any serious injury or death, largely due to Officer Sampieri's quick thinking and heroic actions. Officer Michael Sampieri is awarded the Commendation Bar.
And now, a special message from Vice President of the Melbourne Police Foundation, Nadine Smith.
Hi, my name is Nadine Smith, Vice President of the Melbourne Police Foundation. As you know, the Melbourne Police Foundation is comprised of a group of citizens who raise money for the Melbourne Police Department to cover things like training and equipment that are not covered by the city budget. We are always looking for additional supporters for our officers, so if you have a family member looking to get involved, please let us know. We are proud of all of the officers at MPD. It is our honor each year to purchase and present the awards given to the Employee of the Year, Communication Officer of the Year, and Officer of the Year. Congratulations to the winner of each category. Thank you to all officers for the work that you do every day. We appreciate you.
We now go to Chief Gillespie presenting the Officer, Employee, and Communications Officer of the Year Awards. This gathering was held in March 2021 at the Melbourne Police Department.
All right, thank you all for being here today at this event. I'm excited to announce the recipients of the 2020 Police Officer of the Year, Communications Officer of the Year, and Employee of the Year. Today's announcement is a little different than we've done it in the past. We've had to do things a little bit differently, as you know, because we couldn't hold our 13th annual award ceremony as we have done in the past due to the COVID pandemic. So instead of the annual banquet, we're doing a taped recording, and therefore this presentation will be added to the recording that's already been done for the virtual presentation. But before we get started, I want to thank our special guests and elected officials for being here today to celebrate with us. Vice Mayor Tim Thomas, thank you. Council Member Debbie Thomas. And City Manager Shannon Lewis. I also want to give a special welcome to Nadine Smith, past President and Board Member of the Melbourne Police Foundation. Nadine, thank you for being here. As you know, the Melbourne Police Foundation is the department's biggest supporter. They do fundraisers to help the department's mission, and they're always there to find ways to encourage us. Each year, they contribute a sizable donation to help cover the expenses for the annual awards banquet. and also to cover the cost for the Officer of the Year plaques. Nadine, would you come join me up here for the presentation? Before we actually do the presentations, I have just a couple things I wanted to say about last year, because it was a little different than any other year I know in my 30-plus year career. 2020 was a year that presented tremendous challenges for law enforcement. There were a number of social justice issues throughout this country, and law enforcement practices were scrutinized and questioned. Police legitimacy was diluted by many cities through an effort to defund the police and reprioritize how to deal with many social problems that typically had fallen into the hands of law enforcement. Locally, we dealt with protests, community marches, and community meetings to address race relations, law enforcement practices, and discuss ways to build trust and improve transparency. 2020 also brought many challenges due to the COVID pandemic. We had to flip our thought process upside down and be creative in how we carried out our jobs and delivered quality service. We were forced to socially distance, wear masks, and be out in the streets while others were hunkering down inside for safety. We had to stagger schedules and have people work from home. We had to wear personal protective equipment and were concerned about protecting ourselves from catching the virus and exposing our families to it. Despite the challenges, we were expected to deliver the same exceptional service that our community expects and deserves. And I can tell you that I'm extremely proud of the way our officers and employees responded. There are many heroes from the past year, and it was very difficult to select the award recipients because we had so many deserving candidates. Our officers continued to make arrests for homicides, violent crime, and investigate crime scenes that exposed them to the COVID virus. Many came down and tested positive for COVID, but our members were flexible and adapted with every phase of the last year. We had to realign our priorities and could no longer take simple things for granted. Who would have thought hand sanitizer would become such a hot commodity? That we would be wearing masks in our workspace, or that toilet paper would disappear from the shelves at every local grocery store. It was a year filled with unexpected challenges, but it also presented many opportunities. And our officers and employees shined. You represented our agency in the highest regard, and I'm proud of each one of you for your dedication and commitment. And while we are here to honor 3 individuals for their amazing accomplishments, you should all be proud of your hard work through this past year and for overcoming the many obstacles that we faced in the year 2020. So at this time, we're going to get right to it. And I would like to recognize the Melbourne Police Department's Communication Officer, Employee, and Officer of the Year for 2020. In 2020, the Melbourne Police Department's Communications Officer of the Year is Lindsay Stevens. Where's Lindsay? There she is. All right, yeah, if you'll stand up here, I'm going to read just a quick couple comments about Lindsay and some of the things she did last year to really stand out. Lindsay has represented the Communications Center in an exceptional manner. She was a critical part of the communications team working while detectives were following a homicide suspect who was driving through the county in multiple jurisdictions, discarding evidence at various locations. Lindsay was a model employee who set the standard for professionalism and teamwork. At one point, she brought in food for the officers to encourage teamwork and support. This included providing breakfast for the officers on Valentine's Day and a show of appreciation for the officers. She was instrumental in getting assistance to officers during a struggle in the booking room. She noticed a combative prisoner on the booking room video, and she issued a tone alert summonsing help for the officers who were unable to push their emergency button. Lindsay was recognized along with other employees from the Communications Center with a Unit Meritorious Award for handling a tremendous amount of calls relating to the onset of COVID-19, shooting incidents, a homicide, and 2 commercial structure fires. In addition, Lindsay received several applause awards throughout the year for continually going above and beyond her duties. Please join me in congratulating Lindsay Stevens as the 2020 Communications Officer of the Year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Did you have sisters?
Congratulations. Thank you very much.
And this is yours also.
Oh, goodness. Thank you.
You can hold them.
Hold them both? You got it?
Oh, yeah, I
You
got
got
it. I got it. All right, so next we'll move on to the Employee of the Year. The recipient of the Melbourne Police Department's Employee of the Year Award is Cliff Trottier. Congratulations.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you.
Cliff was thrust into a new role in 2020. He was instrumental in ensuring that our personal protective supplies were stocked and disseminated. He had to count the items when they came in. This included thousands of masks, visors, gowns, gloves, hand sanitizer containers, and he helped put together the PPE packs for each officer and was accessible for all of our needs throughout each day during the pandemic. He worked with a sense of urgency and tracked, organized, and secured all of our supplies. Cliff made sure each officer had what they needed, and he assisted me on a daily basis as we worked quickly to attain supplies and keep our members safe. But I was constantly going to Cliff asking him how many pieces of each personal protective equipment we had, and Cliff was always stop what he was doing to help out. He, along with many others, learned the difference between an N95 mask and a KN95 mask, what is a real and what is a fake, the difference between various types of hand sanitizer, and he learned how to assemble the face shields, even though I don't think they were worn very much. Cliff also found himself shuffling cars back and forth from the maintenance garage to headquarters, and even placing some of these vehicles in strategic locations throughout the city to be used as a ghost car. And that was to deter speeders and criminal activity. It worked great until the tires got slashed.
That was fun.
That was not his fault. At the same time, Cliff had to order uniforms for the police academy class at a moment's notice and ensure they were prepared for graduation. He researched expandable batons and handled each task with a great attitude and a service-minded approach. He maintained a can-do attitude and was a tremendous asset to the agency throughout the pandemic. Cliff was awarded Employee of the Month and a Unit Meritorious Award for his exemplary work ethic. For these reasons and many more, I'm pleased to recognize Cliff Trottier as the Melbourne Police Department's Employee of the Year for 2020.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'll hold it. You get her. You can come in too. We'll get all of us.
What are you doing here?
We had to surprise you.
Last second.
All right, that one's
Awesome.
yours too. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Well deserved. Thank you. All right, and now, last but certainly not least, is the Police Officer of the Year Award. The recipient of the Melbourne Police Department's 2020 Officer of the Year is Detective Jennifer Frost. Congratulations. Detective Frost has had an exemplary year and several extraordinary achievements. While she had assistance from other detectives in some of these cases, she set herself apart through her consistent high level of performance and results. Detective Frost was instrumental in solving several high-profile homicides, participating in RICO cases, dozens of felony fraud cases, and other investigations. As a result of her tenacity, she received the Honorable Service Bar and Unit Meritorious Bar, and was commended by her supervisors and peers. She is a leader in her position, instructs new detectives, and runs large-scale crime scenes. In one case, Detective Frost was able to gain an admission from a suspect that he was the only person with the victim at the time of her death. The interrogation led to the suspect's arrest and getting an abusive and violent offender off the streets. She also worked on a homicide at the River Palm Hotel and the homicide arrest of the suspect who was discarding evidence throughout multiple jurisdictions. Detective Frost is a tremendous asset to the department and deserving of this recognition. Please join me in congratulating her as the 2020 Melbourne Police Officer of the Year. Congratulations. That is for you. And now just there. So in closing, I want to thank all of you for being here today as we recognize our outstanding employees. While these individuals stood out for their extraordinary work, I'm proud of all of our members. At a time when we are working through extraordinary challenges, our employees excelled. They adapted to the challenges and continued to address crime trends, and as a result of their hard work, crime in the city declined for the third straight year. We addressed an increase of homelessness, prepared for the implementation of body-worn cameras, worked tenaciously on preparing for our upcoming reaccreditation, prepared our budget, worked on the design of our new police headquarters, and filled every position vacancy that we had. Although we were not able to host the award ceremony in person this year, we have developed a virtual awards presentation to honor all of our award recipients. Our members deserve the recognition for their dedication and extraordinary accomplishments. This virtual presentation will be out as soon as we can splice today's presentation into the film. And before we conclude, I want to thank several people who were instrumental in the creation of the virtual presentation, because it would not have been possible without their hard work and the creativity of Christina Brainard. Christina was the brainstormer, organizer, coordinator, and designer of the project. She leveraged her connections with L3 Harris, mainly Deb Green, Terrence Gerard, and Marc Weinkoop. These individuals allowed us to use the L3 Harris video production unit and spent over 40 hours of their time on this endeavor. I also want to thank our command staff, our Mayor Paul Alfrey, Nadine Smith from the Foundation, for participating in the recorded portion of that presentation. I want to thank the Melbourne Police Foundation for their continued support of our agency, the members of our awards committee for their outstanding work throughout the year. If you are part of the awards committee, can you please raise your hand? Give them a round of applause. It's a thankless job, but we all appreciate the work that you do. Lisette Papalardo for coordinating and organizing the presentation of the awards. Where's Lisette? Mindy Andre for creating and preparing the awards. Karen Smith for overseeing all of our purchasing for these events. Colton Williams, where's Colton over here, for setting up the presentation area. Also for keeping our buildings safe and cleaning them from COVID with the new machine that we got. Thank you very much. And Colleen Warren for being my right hand and preparing for these events and stressing her out at the last minute. And finally, I thank all of our council, the city manager, for your support and guidance and direction to be able to help us be the agency that we are and get us to where we need to be. And finally, I thank all of you for attending today's announcement and celebrating with us and officials from our fine agency in the great city of Melbourne, Florida. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for participating in the 2020 Melbourne Police Department Awards ceremony. We'd like to conclude with a special message from Chief David Gillespie.
To our award recipients, I am proud of each and every one of you. I thank you for your sacrifice. Your commitment is making a difference in the lives of those we serve. I know you understand that, and I thank you for your dedicated service. Thank you also for representing our agency in the highest regard. In closing, I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank our mayor, city council, city manager, and community for their support. I am proud to work with an organization with so many outstanding people who have a passion to make a difference. I hope you enjoyed our presentation and wish you all a safe and prosperous year.